What's good, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation First and 10, your weekly go-to for Raider news and analysis. And we are actually less than a week away from the NFL draft. We just talked to Raiders general manager John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll, and we're going to get to that in just 1 second. I am Vinny Bonsignore. I'm the beat writer for the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. And to my right is my good friend and colleague, Adam Hill. Also, Mr. Do-It-All, Raiders, UNLV, WWE.
WrestleMania. I'm
learning a lot about that.
Well, it's at Allegiant Stadium. I guess it kind of ties in.
Absolutely. Sure. It's a spectacle. It's an event.
I also do expect
yes,
a Raider of some sort
course.
to be a part of it. It's been pretty much every year since they've been doing stadiums, they've had a local football player.
Right.
Or multiple
Ever since
players.
they've been doing it at NFL stadiums every year. And by the way, my son just texted me this earlier today. Shout out to Noah Bonsignore. Do you know that since they've been doing NFL stadiums and an NFL player comes out from that particular city's team, every year that team has gone on to make the playoffs? Now, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to check that, but my son came across a meme, and we know how we feel about memes sometimes, about the authenticity of them. We're going to have to double check that. But according to a meme that Noah sent me, every team after WrestleMania that puts a player onto the stage at the stadium that they play at for WrestleMania, that WrestleMania is also held at, that team has gone on to make the playoffs.
I'm trying to think back. So last year was Philadelphia, and they actually won the Super Bowl.
They ended up winning the Super Bowl, yes.
Tampa, I think 2020 won the Super Bowl.
There you go. So we might be even be talking about Super Bowls.
Dallas was in there.
But they made the playoffs at least. That's more where the Raiders would still be happy.
Was there
with.
A Cleveland? I think there was a Cleveland.
SoFi Stadium for
okay.
sure.
All right. Well, there you
go. All right. So we'll get on that. But so far it's trending in the direction of correct. Of accurate, so okay. We'll double check that. But before we get to our thoughts on the draft and what Pete Carroll and John Spytek had to say today, I just want to remind everybody that Vegas Nation podcasts are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports, and of course. We appreciate their great support, as we do all of our listeners and readers and all of that. Please keep hitting the like button, subscribe, do whatever you have to do on whatever medium you're listening to us, reading us, watching us, whatever the case might be. Do the right thing, and we truly do appreciate it. Adam Hill, of course, we weren't going to get anything today of significance in terms.
I thought they were just going to announce who they were picking.
Right. Q Myers tried to get that.
Sure.
And Pete Carroll, even on his way out, was like, Q, good question.
Who are we picking?
Not going to tell you.
Not going to tell you.
But, what was interesting to me, and we're going to hear a soundbite from this is John Spytek and Pete Carroll's first rodeo together. It's one thing to do free agency. It's one thing to do an offseason. That's challenging enough when you're throwing two people together. But there's nothing like the draft room and the draft process, which, they've been working at the draft process for months and months and months. It's all leading into next weekend. But eventually decisions are going to have to be made. Sure. Real decisions are going to have to be made, not role-playing or surmising or thinking what might happen at this particular point in the draft. Actual decisions have to be made. And my question was, how do you go about building the consensus to make the decisions? And who is the ultimate decision maker when there maybe isn't necessarily, a consensus on a decision? And this was John Spytek and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll first, and then John Spytek talking about that very thing. Here we go.
We're gonna work it out. Yeah. That's all you need to know. We're gonna work it out. We're dedicated to doing that, and it will be consensus on everything we do.
And the guys that we don't have a consensus on, we probably won't take. It's been my experience too. So they're probably not right for the Raiders and for us.
So there you have it. Pete Carroll said, "Hey, all you need to know is we're going to work toward that. We're going to work toward that, and there will be a consensus on every decision." John Spytek saying, "And if there isn't a consensus, we probably won't draft that player." So I ask you, Adam,
what does that mean? First of all,
I know.
The consensus would be this player or that player.
Well, no,
not a consensus.
Yes. Well, if there isn't, I think what he was saying is, let's just say a defensive back from Michigan. And there isn't a consensus on that player at that particular point in the draft. Like one guy is feeling it, the other guy is not feeling it at that particular point in the draft. They'll move on.
Right, if you move on to another player,
Oh yeah,
And
I feel
the
good
one
about-
guy would be like, no, how about that other guy?
yes.
That's weird. That's the guy we were talking
This
about. So
is-
there's no such thing as coming to a consensus
I
on every
agree.
single. It just can't happen. I will say Pete Carroll answered first, right?
Well, first of all,
So
to take
he's-
it
he's the
even a
one?
step to take it even a step back from that, I don't know the count on this, but scanning around the NFL, I don't know that there's been many coach, general manager, pre-draft media availabilities
Yeah.
that included both of those
Right.
positions. Most times, it's been the general manager, if you look across the league. So just the mere fact that it was Pete Carroll and John Spytek today indicates that there is, I'm just going to say it. It's Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll is going to be making the decisions if it gets to casting the deciding vote, or so just putting his foot down and saying, no, this is gonna happen. It's Pete Carroll. That's the history that he had with the Seattle Seahawks. I think that's how he feels like it needs to be done, and I expect that to be the case. Not that there's going to be major arguments or storming out of the draft room or
punches will be thrown.
no, not in front of the cameras at
sure.
least. But I do think he has the ultimate decision. But I think Pete Carroll is also kind of one of the, as competitive as he is, and as as committed as he is to being that ultimate decision maker. He's also a very agreeable person in a lot of ways. So one way or another, I do believe them that at each turn there'll be a consensus to make their decisions.
I mean, I just don't think that's a
Feasible?
realistic or feasible thing. But I think you're right. I think it's
Somebody has to concede.
Somebody will have to at some point. That's how things work. I mean,
Right.
you don't really. I don't think you even want a consensus, really. I mean, if it's like, yes, this is the answer, and there's no like dissension, like you don't really come to the best decisions in that regard. So I think discussion and disputes are healthy, and all those sorts of things. But I think it is Pete Carroll. And I think in most cases, I would say the GM should have the final say. I'd also say that I've been very vocal. I think John Spytek is going to be phenomenal at this job. I think
Absolutely.
he's going to be great. And so I would, if I were a fan, I would say I prefer maybe having John Spytek having that decision. But it's a pretty unique case in that you would expect, if things go incredibly well
Yes.
for Spytek and Carroll,
Yeah.
Pete Carroll's probably here 3 or 4 years, and John Spytek's probably here 20.
Yeah.
If the best case scenario, if everything goes very well.
Right.
So I think you could be like, if you're a Spytek, like, all right, like, get the guys that you need for these next couple of years. I'm obviously gonna be there and having my say, and I have my scouts and everything else. But for the first year or two, okay, I see it's yours. You're here short term. I'm here long term. That's how we're gonna work things out, and I think that's fine. And so I think that process will be okay. But to the point of the consensus and discussion, like, you're gonna have those things anyway.
Right.
But you really don't. There's not time for a whole lot of that.
Not when
Really-
you get to the third, fourth round.
and time is really now too. I mean, what you want to do is trust your board, and what they're doing now is putting together their board and ranking all the guys, and they're putting them in tiers and all those other different things. And you want to really have that nailed down to the point where you don't have to have a lot of those debates going on draft night. The debate should be now of like, all right, this guy or this guy, this position or this position, and like, yeah, come down to, hey, we have our top-rated defensive back and our top-rated offensive tackle. Which one do we go to? Now you have to have a discussion.
That's what and
But for the
those
most part-
discussions will happen.
Right, but for the most part, like, you have your board. You should have your board.
Well,
to the point where you don't have
you-
to have a whole lot of that.
You do, but even as John Spytek said to us today, holding the 6th pick overall, there's only 5 times. Well, I don't know how many iterations you could do, but he said there's only a finite amount of possibilities at number 6.
Well, I would hope that we're not talking about the 6th pick in terms of where the disputes are.
No, well-
you're talking about 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th.
Well, yeah,
rounds
of
where
course,
there's gonna be-
much more likely
Right.
that would
I
be
would
the
hope
case.
you're nailed down to where you're going, like your
Where
top
you know exactly
2 or 3 that you're
like
picking.
you said, there's only a certain amount of
Right.
combinations that exist
Yeah.
that would affect that decision to the point where they should have that decision made to fit whatever the situation
don't-
might be.
You have to have, like, they're running through all these drills right now and the practices and what if this, what if this, what if this, what if this. Like, not a whole lot of that necessarily is for the first round. Like, you're not going to have your, like, 238th ranked guy, your 147th guy. Like, those are gone. Like, well, now what do we do? Like,
Right.
just take Abdul Carter, I guess, and just
Yeah.
call it a day, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, there's like 3 or 4 guys, I think you say one of these 3 is going
Yeah.
to be available at this spot. What do we do if somebody calls us? Do we trade, to trade down?
Yes.
And if, John Spytek, I thought, used a great example of Vita Vea. from was it 2019, 2017 draft? I'm trying to
With your
remember
guy,
where
Josh Allen.
Yeah, where they the Bills traded up with the Bucs, where John Spytek was to get Josh Allen. They were taking Vita Vea no matter what. And they said, well, if we trade now, we know we're still getting him. And so in this scenario, if the Raiders know who they want at 6 and know he'd be available at, say, let's just say, for example, 9.
Which is what I think the Raiders would prefer to happen, but go ahead.
Yeah. And like, they're like, okay, the guy we want at 6 will also be available at 9. So if 9, just throwing that out there randomly. If
The
9,
Saints, who need a quarterback.
Who need a quarterback. If they call, then, okay, now this is going to happen. This is a scenario to play out. And yes, it's possible that the guy that you think you're taking at 6 or you want at 6 is gone 5. Like, okay, now that changes all the scenarios. So there are scenarios to work out, but for the most part, I think you're talking later in the draft where there's a lot more possibilities, a lot more things that could go kind of off, out of control, and you don't have predicted. When you're picking 6, you have a lot of scenarios that are pretty much you're pretty clear what's going to happen.
I almost wanted to thank John Spytek for jogging our memory about that scenario, because what it did for me, and this is what I immediately locked down in, they went from 7 to 12. That's a fairly steep drop, but what it told me was, what it gave me a better understanding of is how far would they be willing to drop down in this draft. If you go from 7 to 12, you'd probably go 6 to 12 too. I'd have to look at who's there at 12 or who's there at 11. But for that reason, the fact that he's already been part of a decision-making process that said, yes, we're okay with going from 6 or from 7 to
49ers
12.
11?
That's who. See,
I think the Dolphins are 12. I mean, totally off the top of my head right now, but
I know the 49ers are at number 11,
Okay.
and let's just stick with that because we were hearing a lot of talk about the Raiders and Armand Membao from Missouri, the offensive tackle from Missouri. I just feel like that might be a little bit of a smokescreen. And I think that the 49ers, who seem to be kind of locked in on him as well, or would love to have him, what's their biggest issue right now? Probably offensive line, protecting the quarterback that you don't like very much.
They need a corner, too.
Yeah, true, but I think.
And, by the way, if it's true that, look, you have to look at all scenarios.
Yeah, for sure.
If they've really made, like, a final offer to Brock Purdy and he said not even close, which was kind of been reported, like, all right, maybe they're in the business of a quarterback. Like, there's a few teams out there, I think. A lot of people said there's only 3 or 4 teams that are looking for a quarterback. I don't think that's true. I think there's other teams that could be interested and will be interested at some point in this draft. But yes, all those possibilities exist, and all those things are possible. And so that's, to me, that is the scenario you're looking at the 6th pick of, we probably know who we're going to pick if we're the Raiders. What could be offered to us to move, and how far can we go? Because the reason they were willing to move down, and you talk about moving down from 7 to 12, then the reason they were willing to move down is because they had to run a bunch of scenarios, and they assumed correctly that the guy they were going to pick at 7, Vita Vea, was also going to be there at 12, and they were right about that.
And it could also be, and this is the other, just to add to that, that there might be 2 players that they're okay with. That the more of those, the better, because that gives you more confidence and comfort level to drop down. Real quick, you just brought up a really good point about who knows what teams want a quarterback. The Miami Dolphins. May be looking at a path out of, and I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but you can't rule anything out at this point. It's a volatile, static situation. And speaking about the quarterbacks, John Spytek was asked about how he plans to handle the quarterback position in this draft, and I think he kind of, not that he played a hand at all, but I think their actions so far during the draft. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on what he
mocked on us. He's like, I'm sure you've all done your investigative journalism. You know that we've brought in quarterbacks.
Yeah, a little tip of the cap on his part to us. But I have my thoughts on that. But here's John Spytek talking about the quarterbacks and their activity as it relates to the quarterbacks so far in the draft evaluation process.
You guys have all done your investigative journalism well enough to know that we've brought some quarterbacks in, and that wasn't by accident by any means. And we remain open to the most important position in sports to get right, and we're super excited to have Geno here, and we continue to expect him to be here for a while, but you can't have too many of those guys.
All right, so that's John Spytek talking about how active the Raiders have been, and not only active, Adam, but prominent in their actions. They've in their own little way, whether it was taking some players out or putting some players in a cluster that they brought together into a competitive atmosphere. I think they went out and played some golf or something along those lines to kind of gauge, how they handled certain situations. It got out, right? It got out. It was a pretty big thing that they brought in this quarterback, that quarterback, this quarterback. They threw them all together, and they're bringing in Shedeur Sanders. And so I've been around long enough. You've been around long enough. How much of that was only for their own purposes, or to make other teams know that, hey,
Yeah, I think it's both.
Yeah.
It's in your best interest when you have a pick that you might be shopping for teams to think you might be taking a quarterback, or listen, teams to think you might be taking any position that
Right.
they're interested in. For teams to not know what you're planning on doing.
exactly.
And part of the problem for the Raiders is that everyone on the planet right now assumes that they know what the Raiders are doing. I mean, if you look at, I think it's outside the top three, I think the most, consensus of any player in mock drafts all around the world
Who would that be?
is that the
Adam?
Raiders are taking Ashton Genty.
Who- What? I haven't heard
So,
that.
yeah. So, I mean, that's shocking.
Is he
But
even going
everybody
to be
thinks
there?
that. I think he is. And I think he's going to be there past the Raiders. But
Oh!
I think that,
Oh, breaking news.
well, we don't know. And maybe it's not. But it's in. Look, if the Raiders knew they were taking Ashton Genty, they wouldn't have to be doing anything. Like, hey, just call it a day. We already know who we're taking. Let's start working on the other rounds. But first of all, you wouldn't do that.
No,
'cause
of course.
It's it'd be a terrible decision. But also, you'd be telling everybody in the world, like, okay, well, there's no reason. We know what you're doing. Why would we trade up? Like, why would we, if we're, say, the Jets at 7,
Right. You're not taking the
who
quarterback.
we kind of know who they're taking too. You already mentioned him. So if they know that, hey,
Armand
they're gonna-
Mambu.
if they're going to take Genty, well, we can just sit where we are.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Raiders Colton Miller's not practicing, maybe the Raiders are going to take a tackle. Maybe the Jets have to jump up, give you something to move down one spot, and still get the guy that you want. Like,
Right.
that'd be ideal for the Raiders. So you want to keep everybody guessing. You don't want everybody in the world thinking they know what you're doing.
Especially when, you might have the 49ers hot on their trail as well, to telling the Jets, like, look, if it's not you, we may take him, or we actually might trade him to the Miami, whatever, the San Francisco 49ers, someone else that's looking for an offensive lineman.
Or if the Cowboys want to take
Ashton Genty.
Dallas raised Ashton
Oh,
Genty,
yeah.
then maybe you want them to think that you are taking him. So there's all these games being played, which is the fun part of the draft. And actually, John Spytek kind of appreciates that. I think he talked about it as like, that's why it's fun. That's why people are interested. All these different things can happen. Nobody really knows what's going to go on. And as he said, we think we know, but it's all just guessing, just like it is for everybody else.
All right, I'm going to go back to, you can't just say what you said and then think that I'm the investigative journalist that I am is just going to let that one slide. You said that you think that Ashton Genty is going to be there after the Raiders pick.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean?
I think, oh boy, people aren't going to like this. I think John Spytek is smart. I don't think he would take a running back at 6. I just don't. And I think Ashton Genty's a great player. I do. But he understands value, and he's talked about that before. And, if you listen, if you're not paying attention to every single day, like, it's our job that we have to do, like.
So this is John Spytek's decision.
He did well, and we'll see. I think it's a conversation. I think Pete Carroll's probably pretty smart too.
Yeah, he is.
But we've heard. I think he's a little more old school though, so maybe
Right.
he goes in that direction. And Ashton Genty.
Well, I think
admirer of Genty's a huge admirer of Marshawn Lynch, so that kind of combination makes sense in a way. John Spytek gave an interview not too long ago, and I'm sure some people saw it, that he basically said he wouldn't be allowed back at his house if he doesn't take Ashton Genty. His son is like, you're not coming back, Dad. You take him. His son is very into fantasy football, so he wants a running back, scores touchdowns, all those things. John Spytek would not say that if they were taking Ashton Genty. I don't think he would. I just don't think he would put that out there. I think it would be, unless, hey, if you want to chalk it up to
a moment of
rookie mistake.
Yeah.
He doesn't usually do that, and now he's doing, he's, as he said today, I'm not talking about specific players. Maybe you chalk it up in that. I don't think he's putting that out there if that was their plan, for one. And I do feel.
So who is he taking?
And while he came back today, I think they're fascinated and very, very intrigued by trying to trade down. I think that is what
Oh,
they
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
do, for sure. But again, you have to try to get somebody to trade up.
Correct.
I think he changed his tune a little bit today, where he gave an interview last week that I think we played here on the podcast about his understanding of positional value and the economics of of position scarcity and those sorts of things that he understands and he gets it. And I was like standing on the table, jumping up and down, saying, "Yes, he gets it. He understands. He's a general manager that not only understands it but also will say it out loud." And then he comes in today, as we're taping this right after his press conference, and he said, "I don't know where this running backs aren't valuable."
That
thing
was
comes from."
noticeable.
Like what? Like now all of a sudden you're back to being old school mentality. Like where did this come from? And he did acknowledge it. Thank goodness, because other people look at Saquon. Yes, look at Saquon. A running back is the final piece of a great team.
This is Adam going off on a tangent.
Yes, a running back is the final piece of a great team. A running back doesn't make you a great team.
Yeah, my question is, okay, yeah, correct. Now, if I always say this.
By the way,
I always say this.
Drafting the best tight end ever also doesn't make you a good team and doesn't get you any wins.
Also, maybe not that year, but you don't know this
by
year
the
or next year.
time by the time the team's good, then he's probably getting paid a lot more, and he's not. It's not like yes, premium positions matter.
Yeah, but
there's a reason we call them premium positions.
Give me the clear examples of players that weren't running backs that were drafted in the top 6 that led to immediate success for their teams as well.
The quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks
do, and wide receivers.
Well, of course, if
sometimes
there's
do.
so now you're on the Shedeur Sanders bandwagon.
Good quarterbacks.
So short of that, if you don't have, I agree. Somebody brought
Well,
up
if they draft a quarterback, they're not starting him anyway. So I mean, that's not going to matter too.
Fair enough, but the conversation. Let's just stick with the Missouri tackle. If we're talking about Joe Alt right now, I'm saying take Joe Alt above Ashton Genty.
Yeah.
I don't think he is Joe Alt or Penei Sewell. If it's a decision between that caliber of tackle and this caliber of running back, I go with the tackle in that situation. If you're talking about is it Nick Bosa and Ashton Genty at number 6, I'm taking Nick Bosa. The question that I'm asking in this draft, not in every draft that has ever happened or ever will happen, you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt with in this year. So that's why now trading down makes a ton of sense.
Of course.
What if nobody's willing to trade up to you? So now you're stuck at number 6, and you're deciding between an Armand Membao.
To me, you're praying that, and I know we talked about this off the air, I think on the air as well. To me, you're praying that Jacksonville does not take Mason Graham, which it's starting to look like maybe they're not going to.
Right? Why?
Like that'd be. Jacksonville has a very, very, very bad draft history, and probably.
But it's a totally different regime
it's
now.
Continue.
And James Gladstone, I'm predicting he's going to be just fine in his role.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, and that also could be smoke screens out there too, because he is still the favorite in the betting market to be the 5th pick. But there are some changes coming out there. For those that we did, I'll say I did. If you didn't check it out, we did a mock draft based simply on the betting market, nothing else. No, like news reports, nothing of opinion. Just hey, what does the betting market say? And right now, the first 9 picks, according to the betting market, are pretty much locked in.
And what's that number 6?
Ashton Genty is the favorite there.
Where's Shedeur going that?
9 to the Saints.
See, if he's going to go in 9, that's where you almost have to trade down. Like you have to make it abundantly. You know what I'm saying? Like
if Saints, you want him, but also and I don't think this is going to happen, but you never know what's going to happen. Like Aaron Rodgers could decide in the next couple of days he's going to New Orleans, and like I don't think that's the case.
No, of course, anything could
that could throw the market off for sure. Or he could decide that he's going to Pittsburgh, which I don't think. But Pittsburgh right now might have to trade up to trade the quarterback because I think they've been operating on the assumption they're getting Aaron Rodgers for like a month and a half, and they might not get him now.
Right.
So they might. So a lot of things change. A lot of things can change. Last week we didn't know Derek Carr was going to miss the season potentially.
And he's not.
All of a sudden he might be. So.
He might miss all of New Orleans this season, which is crazy.
Crazy things happen. But right now, like the market does kind of assume how the first 9 picks are going to play out. So check that out if you want to check out how the betting markets see the first round. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities of what could happen coming up on Thursday, and that's why it's fun for us to talk about. It's fun for you guys to listen. It's fun to watch it as it plays out on Thursday night.
Absolutely, and we will obviously be here. Real quick before we get out of here, going to send it to our own Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito, the race and sportsbook director of Station Casinos STN Sports. They are going to talk about the draft. Heidi, Chuck, take it away.
Joining us now here on the Vegas Nation First and 10 podcast, we have the race and sportsbook director from Station Casinos, Chuck Esposito, in for his weekly segment. How are you doing, Chuck?
I'm good, Heidi. It's a week away, so it's exciting for the pro football draft. If you're a football fan, I mean, this is going to be an interesting draft this year, I think, for a lot of teams.
100%. And one of the more interesting things I see happening right now as the first round kind of shakes out, we're looking at Cam Ward most likely, probably, definitely going to the Titans at number one. Some of the odds I have seen for that are astronomical. When you think about the quarterback position generally, Shedeur Sanders has obviously been in the mix, but now we're hearing that it's a possibility 3 quarterbacks go in the first round. How is that shaking out in terms of odds with station casinos? And also, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you absolutely see 3 quarterbacks go in the first round and maybe 4. It's such a quarterback-driven league. We saw how many went last year. Bo Nix and Michael Penix both drafted earlier than a lot of people thought. I think this case you're going to see Jackson Dart go in the first round, and I think Jalen Milroe might sneak his way in the first round as well. It's a quarterback-driven league. We know the Giants, the Saints, the Browns, just to name a few, need a quarterback. Maybe the Raiders, a backup quarterback as well, a young developmental kid. So I think you're going to see 3 for sure and maybe 4. Interesting thing for me is that every team right now holds their first round pick. So I think it's going to be fun. Which teams are willing to kind of trade back up to give something away to maybe grab one of these guys later in the first round? And I think if Sanders drops, you'll see teams anxious to move up. And I think with Dart and Milroe as well, you're going to see teams want to trade up to grab one of these guys because of that 5th-year option you have for first-round picks.
Or trade down, maybe, if the Raiders don't want to go in the direction of Ashton Genty, which, like, almost every mock at this point has Ashton Genty going to the... I know. I've seen, like, at least, like, I don't know, 8 at least. So when you think about just the probability that Genty maybe goes to the Raiders at 6, or do they trade out of that spot? What is the latest market trend kind of telling you about that?
Well, it's definitely favored at running back, but there's been a lot of kind of buzz of late. And I know you say almost every mock and we laugh about it, but offensive lineman is starting to get a little traction that people like. I mean, we have it at 7-1 right now for an offensive lineman to be the Raiders' first pick. So maybe some value there. You've heard Membu's name out of Missouri as maybe a guy that they would grab right there. I think Genty's one of those generational type talents that a lot of teams are in on. Would Chicago, Dallas, Denver be willing to leapfrog the Raiders, or maybe trade with the Raiders if the Raiders think I can move back, get some more assets, and still get a serviceable running back early in the draft? But Genty's kind of the key for me. I think the first 5, we kind of have a general idea, but that 6th pick of the Raiders, teams either trying to move up to that spot or the Raiders taking Genty, I think is going to kind of set the stage for the rest of the draft. But don't rule out an offensive lineman for the Raiders.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you bring that up, given the news of Colton Miller actually holding out of the voluntary workout and off-season program with the Raiders, looking for a contract extension. He is on the last year of his deal. He's the longest tenured Raider, drafted in first round 2018 out of UCLA, and then now holding out because in his contract, it is the final year. He's at $12.2 million-ish owed, but nothing guaranteed. How much is that going to affect that decision?
I think it'll play into it somewhat, but I think it's how they want to build that team right now. You've got Geno Smith. I know that the running back room could use a young running back, but I think it's such a deep class that it's not only Genty, it's Hampton, it's Johnson from Iowa, it's the 2 running backs from Ohio State, it's Scadaboo. There's a lot of talented running backs in this draft class, and I think the Raiders have a lot of holes to fill. Although the temptation is great to grab Genty, and we know Pete Carroll likes to have that running back, that bell cow. It's really going to be interesting to see what the Raiders ultimately do. They could trade back to 10, pick up another number 2, maybe a 3 next year, still grab a running back in the second round who could contribute day 1 and get some more assets. But it might be tough to pass up a talent like Genty.
Right, I agree. I mean, and especially when you think about the Pete Carroll offenses of old, and the Sean Alexanders of Seattle and the Marshawn Lynches of Seattle and all those guys that did tremendous things. Obviously, his offense relies on that key running back, and Genty has all of that generational talent to show. I do wonder about the pass blocking and the catching. We'll see how the receptions go. I know he can catch out of the backfield.
That's a really
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really use him in that way at Boise State. They ran in between the hashes with them, and we'll see how much he can go with some of the NFL speed.
Well, I'll interrupt you, but with that
Please,
said, like
yes.
Travion Henderson, who was a back that not only could run but could catch, do you want that element as well? So again, a really deep running back class, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how many go in the first round. I think Hampton and Genty for sure, but does another one find his way in the first round? Or I think if not, at the top of the second round, you're going to probably have 2 or 3 more running backs go.
So you say Ohio State, and I think, oh, Chip Kelly, right? I mean, you start connecting dots, don't you? But now you also think about this, the odds that you guys have posted over at Station Casinos. And don't forget, you can check all of this out on the STN Sports app. But one of those that I love looking at is Mr. Irrelevant. Obviously, everybody knows what happened in 2022 with Brock Purdy being that guy. We haven't seen, anybody of that Brock Purdy status yet. But Chuck, what are some of those odds that people can look at for Mr. Irrelevant? I remember once the Chiefs had the kicker, Ryan Suckup. He was Mr. Irrelevant. You can bet on all the types of positions that you think will be the final pick of the draft. What right now is kind of, the public looking at for fun on those?
It's just a roll of the dice, really, at this point, because the team that holds the last pick right now, will they hold the last pick at the end of the draft? That, what's going to happen exactly? I think it's a fun prop, but it's really tough to kind of predict. I mean, the success of Purdy has made it interesting and made us put this up. But I really have no idea at this point. But we'll see how it all shakes down. The trades for me is interesting, though. You can pick how many trades will occur in the first round. And
I think 7 was the favorite
every
on the
team
board.
holds their first round pick right now.
I agree. And in fact, I'm going to go probably with a good value number on that myself, just to get involved and have some fun with it, because you and I, again, Draftniks, we love doing this stuff. We love talking NFL draft with you all. And Chuck, I really appreciate the time that you gave us here on the podcast to break some of this down. Don't forget, you can get all of this information on the STN Sports app and by walking into any of the station casinos, and you can check out all of the props that they have available. Well, you have some more come draft day. I know right now you have them by team, by position, how many trades, Mr. Irrelevant. What else is cooking there in the books for stations?
It's tough. I mean, the draft has not treated our side of the counter well over the last several years, and I think most people in my chair would say the same thing. We're going to look to put some player props up, I think, over this weekend. So at least they'll be up for 4 or 5 days. It's just we're in an information era, and there's so much information out there that we're just trying to get a grasp of it ourselves. I think putting it up over the weekend and having less than a week, maybe some of these smoke screens and some of this information we'll be able to kind of dive into as well. But we will be putting some player stuff up leading up to the draft next week.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you again so much for the time, Chuck. And I look forward to talking to you again next week here on the First and 10 podcast for Vegas Nation.
Our thanks to Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito for their great contributions. All right, so I'm just going to say we will do. Here's what the plan is for next week. All right, we're going to do roundup podcasts each day of the draft. So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday at some point. So we're not going to do anything. This is going to serve as our pre-draft podcast, and then we will resume action next week. So this is the last time that I'm going to be able to ask you, what do you think is going to happen with the 6th pick overall? And then we'll obviously talk about that on Thursday night, and then moving into the 2nd and 3rd round on Friday.
I think they find a way to trade down.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of what they're doing right now is to try to make that happen. And who do you think that they end up drafting after they trade down?
I think they could still end up with Ashton Genty.
I do too.
Which, if you trade down, it's much more palatable.
No question.
I think Will Johnson, possibly.
Okay.
That could work, I think, for them too. And look, I don't think we know how the Colton Miller situation is going to play out. I think they're going to pay him at some point.
Well, we should really quickly touch on that.
Yeah, he's not. We are in the building right now. He's not.
And it was made very clear to me, extremely clear to me, that no talks have started.
Yeah.
And so just reaching out to people around the league, like, what am I to make of this? Well, here's what you make of it. The fact that they've got as much space that they still have under the salary cap and money to spend, and they haven't started talks with him, probably tells you what they think of him. And now, just to characterize or put that in context, it doesn't mean they don't want to move forward with him. It means they probably want to take this year to see if they do or not. And so that's they're perfectly within their rights to do that. It's in Colton's perfect rights to do what he's doing, but it sounds like just the fact that they haven't initiated any talks with a valued player that is going into a non-guaranteed year of his contract. Which, by the way, he also was going in this situation last year. That his salary last year was non-guaranteed. And I was told that he probably would have done this last year, but he was hurt. It was a moot point, so he wasn't participating anyway. So now he's doing this. What do you make of it?
There has been a pretty significant move in the betting market toward the Raiders taking an offensive lineman in the first round.
Yeah, because of this?
Because of this, for sure. And if they do, it tells you all you need to know about where they stand with Colton Miller.
My issue with that is, my potential issue is that I don't think, well, first of all, the Missouri tackle, Armand Membau, he's a right tackle. Sure. We're talking about a left tackle. I don't know that Will Campbell from LSU is even going to be there, number one. Yeah. Number two, I don't know if he's more of a guard than he is a so like we're not talking about Joe Alt here, who played right tackle for the Chargers but is a left tackle by trade, and I think eventually he'll move to that side. So I don't know. I mean, that's a kind of a chance that I guess the Raiders might take.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of among the offensive linemen this year, and it's not an elite class for sure, and there's not a whole lot of guys at the top of it, which makes it more valuable. Honestly, when there's not a lot of guys that are good, it makes the position more valuable for the guys that are at the top.
True.
But I feel like one of the things you're going to see is a lot of those guys get taken before you probably expect them to. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the other thing we see among the offensive line group. Is a lot of position diversity where guys can play all over the place, guard or tackle. You're not quite sure where they go. And that used to mean if you don't have a position, then we can't draft you because we don't know where you're going to go.
But
now it's value. Exactly. And now I think it's an important thing. So, I think there's several of those guys where you're like, I don't know, guard, tackle. Actually, when we were doing our series, and check this out as well, we did the series of position by position where guys are. And I think we did interior line and tackle separately. And a lot of the guys I was like, well, he's – playing tackle
They're
now,
both.
and he's listed as a tackle, but he's probably a guard. Listed as a right tackle, could be a left tackle, could be the other way around. Like, there's a lot of those guys, and I think that is more valued now than it used to be. And I think with good reason. I think having those guys where you're going to move
the way the rosters are set up
is a good thing. So that's something to watch for, certainly among the offensive line group.
All right, so that's that. I think it's going to be Ashton Genty, and I would not, as Adam said, I would not be surprised if it wasn't at number 6. It was a little bit further down. They pick up a extra second-round pick, which then puts you back in the quarterback position, maybe to trade up back into the first round to get a quarterback. It's all on the table for the Raiders. We'll see how it all goes. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy WrestleMania.
I was also going to say, and we can do it probably after the first round because it won't be a first-round pick, but I mentioned this off the air. Usually I try to pick a late-round guy that I'm like, this is a guy for the Raiders to take. I really like Jackson Slater, offensive lineman. From Sacramento State, who, if you enjoy physical mauling types,
angry,
a comparison like Jackson Powers Johnson from the Raiders, go watch his film.
Does Jackson make an appearance at WrestleMania? I think Max Crosby.
I'm sure he would love to.
Yeah,
I'm sure
he would, not only would he love to, he'd be full on getting into gear and.
If I'm the Raiders, I don't want him to.
Because he might get hurt?
No, because he might switch careers.
Oh.
I think he would love it so much.
Yes.
You'd never get him back.
Right. Yeah.
It's possible.
Well, it'll be interesting to see Saturday and Sunday who among the Raiders shows up over at Allegiant Stadium for WrestleMania. If you don't know, the wrestling has taken over Las Vegas. Sure. It's really cool, actually, and we're anxious to see how it all looks tomorrow and Sunday during WrestleMania. Enjoy that. Enjoy the first round of the draft. Be sure to check in later on Thursday night because we will have everything as updated as possible after that first round and on Friday night as well and Saturday night to wrap it all up. Thank you for your support. Thanks to Las Vegas Review-Journal and Station Casinos STN Sports for all their support. We really appreciate it. Dom, who's over here chilling, thank you, Dom. Appreciate all your help. Until next week, enjoy it. We'll talk to you then.